Good evening, Carl. I am greeting you once again from Recording Studio Oxford. Hope all is well down at your end. And here we come to, I believe, the 22nd of our tales, namely Kari Woodengown. Once upon a time, the king had become a widower. His queen had left one daughter behind her, and she was so wise and so pretty that it was impossible for anyone to be wiser or prettier. For the longest time the king went sorrowing for his wife, who had loved him exceedingly. But at last he got tired of living alone and married a queen who was a widow, and she also had a daughter who was just as ill-favoured and wicked as the other, or was as good and beautiful. The stepmother and her daughter were envious of the king's daughter because she was so pretty, but so long as the king was home they dared do her no harm because his love for her was so great. Then there came a time when he made war upon another king and went away to fight. And then the new queen thought she could do whatever she liked, so she both hungered and beat the king's daughter and chased her out into every corner. At last she thought that everything was too good for her, and then set out to work out to look after the cattle. So she went about with the cattle and herded them into the woods and into the fields. Of food she got little or none, and grew pale and thin, and was always nearly weeping and sad. Among the herd there was a great blue bull, which always kept itself very smart and sleek, and often came to the king's daughter and let her stroke him. One day when she was again sitting, crying and sorrowing, the bull came up to her and asked her why she was always so full of care. She made no answer, but continued to weep. Well, said the bull, I know what it is, though you will not tell me. You're weeping because the queen is unkind to you, and because she wants to starve you to death. But you need to be under no concern about food, for in my left ear there lies a cloth, and if you will take it and spread it out, as you have as many dishes as you like. So she did this, and took the cloth and spread it upon the grass, and there it was covered with the daintiest dishes that anyone could desire. And there was wine, and mead, and cake. Mead, Carl, is a kind of wine made from honey, very sweet. And now she became brisk and well again, good rosy and plump and fair, that the queen and her scraggy daughter turned blue and white with vexation of it. The queen could not imagine how her stepdaughter could look so well on such bad food, so she ordered one of her handmaids to follow into the wood and watch her, and see how it was, for she thought there was some of the servants who must be giving her food. So the maid followed her into the wood and watched, and saw how her stepdaughter took the cloth out of the blue bull's ear and spread it out, and how the cloth was then covered with most delicate dishes, which his stepdaughter ate and regaled herself with. So the waiting maid went home and told the queen. And now the king came home, and he had conquered the other king with whom he had been at war. So there was great gladness in the palace, but no one was more glad than the king's daughter. The queen, however, pretended to be ill, and gave the doctor much money to say that she would never be well again unless she had some of the flesh of the blue bull to eat. Both the king's daughter and the people in the palace asked the doctor if there was no other means of saving her, and begged for the bull's life, as they were fond of him, and they declared there was no such bull in the whole country. It was all in vain. He was to be killed and should be killed, and nothing else would serve. When the king's daughter heard it, she was full of sorrow, and went down to the byre to the bull. He too was standing there, hanging his head, and looking so downcast that she fell a weeping for him. What are you weeping for? Said the bull. She told him that the king had come home again, that the queen had pretended to be ill, and she made the doctor say she could never be well again, unless she ate some of the flesh of the blue bull, and that now he is to be killed. When once they have taken my life, they will soon kill you also, said the bull. But if you have the same mind with me, we could take our departure this very night. The king's daughter thought it would be bad to go and leave her father, but it was worse still to be in the same house with the queen, and she promised in the bull she would come. At night, when the others had gone to bed, the king's daughter stole softly down the byre to the bull, and he took her upon his back, and got out of the courtyard as quickly as he could. So at cockcrow the next morning, when the people had come to kill the bull, he was gone, and when the king got up and asked for his daughter, she was gone too. He sent forth messengers to all parts of the kingdom to search for them, and published his loss in all the parish churches, but there was no one who had seen anything of him. In the meantime the bull travelled through many lands with the king's daughter on his back, and one day they came to a great copper wood, where the trees and the branches and the leaves and the flowers and everything else was of copper. But before they entered the wood, the bull said to the king's daughter, when we enter this wood, you must take greatest care not to touch a leaf of it, or all will be over for both me and you, for a troll with 3 heads, who is the owner of this wood, lives here. So she said she would be on her guard and not touch anything, and she was very careful. She bent out of the way of the brushes and put it aside with her hands, but it was so thickly wooded it was all but impossible to get forward, and do what she might, she somehow or other tore off a leaf which got into her hand. Oh, what have you done now? Said the bull. Now costs a battle of life or death, but do be careful and keep the leaf. Very soon afterwards it came to the end of the wood, and the troll with 3 heads came rushing up to him. "Who is that who is touching my wood?" said the Troll. "The wood is just as mine as yours," said the Bull. "You shall have a tussle for that," shrieked the Troll. "That may be," said the Bull. So they rushed on each other and fought. As the Bull he butted and kicked with all the strength of his body, but the Troll fought quite as well as he did, and the whole day went by before the Bull put an end to him, and then he himself was so full of wounds and wore out he was scarcely able to move. So it away today, and the Bull told the king's daughter to take the ornament which hung at the Troll's belt, and rub it with him, and then he was himself again, and the next day he set off once more. And now they journeyed on for many, many days, and then after a long, long time they came to Silverwood. The trees and the boughs, and the leaves and the flowers, and everything else was of silver. Before the Bull went into the wood, he said to the king's daughter, "When you enter this wood, you must, for heaven's sake, be very careful not to touch anything at all, and not to pluck off even so much as one leaf, or else all will be over with both you and with me. A Troll with 6 heads lives here, who is the owner of the wood, and I do not think I should be able to overcome him." "Yes," said the king's daughter, "I will take good care not to touch what you do not wish me to touch." But when they got into the wood, it was so crowded, and the trees so close together, that they could scarcely get forward. She was as careful as she could be, and bent aside to get out of the way of the branches, and thrust them away before her with her hands, but every instant a branch struck against her eyes, and in spite of all her care, she happened to pull off one leaf. "Oh, what have you done?" said the Bull. "It will now cost a battle for life or death, for this Troll has 6 heads, and is twice as strong as the other, but do be careful to keep the leaf." Just as he said this came the Troll. "Who is that who is touching my wood?" he said. "It is just as much as mine as yours." "We shall have a tussle for that," screamed the Troll. "Be that as it may," said the Bull, and he rushed at the Troll and gored out his eyes, and drove his horns right through him so his entrails gushed out. But the Troll fought just as well as he did, and was 3 whole days before the Bull got the life out of him. But the Bull was then so weak and worn out it was only with pain and effort that he could move, and so covered with wounds that the blood streamed from him. So he told the king's daughter to take the horn of ointment that was hanging at the Troll's belt, and anoint him with it. She did this, and when he came to himself again, but they had to stay there and rest for a week before the Bull was able to go. And last they set forth on their way again, but the Bull was still weak, and at first could not go quickly. The king's daughter wished to spare him, and said that she was so young and light of foot that she would willingly walk, but he would not give her leave to do that, and she was forced to seat herself on his back again. And so for a long time they travelled, and through many lands. The king's daughter didn't know where it was taking her, but after a long, long time they came to a gold wood. It was so golden that the gold dripped off it, and the trees, and the branches, and the flowers, and the leaves were all of pure gold. Here all happened just as happened in the copper and the silver wood. The Bull told the king's daughter no account was she to touch it, for there was a Troll with 9 heads who was the owner, and who was much larger and stronger than both the others put together, and that he did not believe he could overcome him. So she said she would take great care not to touch anything, and he should see that she did. When they got into the wood, it was still thicker than the silver wood, and the farther they got into it, the worse it grew. The wood became thicker and thicker, and closer, until last she thought there was no way whatsoever by which they could go forward, and she was so terrified lest she should break anything off that she sat and twisted and turned herself on this side and that to get out of the way of the branches, and pushed them away with her hands. But the moment they struck against her eyes, and she could not see what she was clutching, and before she knew it, she had a great golden apple in her hands. She was now in such terror that she began to cry and wanted to throw it away. But the Bull said she was to keep it, take the greatest care of it, and comfort as well as he could. But he believed it would be a hard struggle, and he doubted whether it would go well with him. Just then the Troll with 9 heads came, and he was so frightful the king's daughter scarcely dared look at him. "Who is this who's breaking my wood?" he screamed. "It is as much as mine as yours," said the Bull. "We shall have a tussle for that," screamed the Troll. "That may be," said the Bull. So they rushed at each other and fought, and it was such a dreadful sight that the king's daughter very nearly swooned. That means fainted, Carl. The Bull gored the Troll's eyes and ran his horns right through him, but the Troll fought as well as he did, and the Bull had gored one head to death, and the other heads breathed life into it again, and so the whole week before the Bull was able to kill him. But he himself was so worn out and weak he could barely move at all. His body was all of one wound, and he could not so much tell the king's daughter to take the horn of ointment out of the Troll's belt and rub him with it. She did this without being told, and he came to himself again, but he had to lie there for 3 weeks and rest before he was in a state to move. And they journeyed on by degrees, for the Bull said that he still had little farther to go, and in this way they crossed many high hills and thick woods. This lasted for a while, and then they came down upon the fells. "Do you see anything?" asked the Bull. "No, I see nothing but the skies above and the wild fell side," said the king's daughter. Then they climbed up higher, and the fell grew more level, so that he could see further and further around them. "Do you see anything now?" said the Bull. "Yes, I see a small castle far, far away," said the princess. "It is not so very little after all," said the Bull. After a long time, they came to a high hill where there was a precipitous wall of rock. "Do you see nothing now?" said the bull. "Yes, I see the castle quite near, and is much, much larger," said the king's daughter. "Thither shall you go," said the bull. "Immediately below the castle there is a pigsty where you shall dwell. When you get there, you will find a wooden gown which you are to put on, and then go to the castle and say it called Kari Woodengown, and you're seeking a place. But now you must take out your little knife and cut off my head with it, and then you must flay me and roll up my hide and put it there under the rock. And beneath the hide you must lay the copper leaf and the silver leaf and the golden apple. Close beside the rock a stick is standing, and when you want me for anything, you have only to knock on the wall of rock with that." At first she would not do it, but when the bull said that was the only reward he would have for what he had done for her, she could do no otherwise. So she thought it was very cruel. She slaved on and cut the great animal with the knife till she cut off his head and hide, and she folded up the hide and lay it beneath the mountain wall, and put the copper leaf and the silver leaf and the golden apple inside it. When she had done all that, she went away to the pigsty, but all the way as she went she wept, and was very sorrowful. Then she put on the wooden gown and walked to the king's palace, and when she got there she went into the kitchen and begged for a place, and saying her name was Kari Woodengown. The cook told her she might have a place and leave to stay there once and wash up, for the girl who had done so before had just gone away. "And as soon as you get tired of being here, you will take yourself off too," said he. "No," she said, "I certainly will not." And she washed up and did it very tidily. On Saturday some strangers were coming to the king's palace, where the king so Kari begged leave to carry up the water for the prince's bath. But others laughed and said, "What do you want there? Do you think the prince will ever look such a fright as you?" She would not give up, however, but went on begging till at last she got leave. When she was going upstairs in a wooden gown, she made such a clatter that the prince came out and said, "What sort of creature may you be?" "I was to take this to you," said Kari. "Do you suppose I want any water that you would bring?" said the prince, and emptied it over her. Not a very nice prince, is he? She had to bear that, but when she asked for permission to go to church, she got that, for the church was very near. First she went to the rock and knocked at it with the stick which was standing there, as the bull had told her to do. Instantly a man came forth and asked her what she wanted. The king's daughter said she had got leave to go to the church and listen to the priest, but she had no clothes to go. So he brought her a gown as bright as the copper wood, and a horse and saddle too from him. When she reached the church, she was so pretty and splendidly dressed that everyone wondered who she could be, and hardly anyone listened to what the priest was saying, for all were looking far too much at her. The priest himself liked her so well, the prince himself, I should say, liked her so well that he could not take his eyes off her for an instant. As she was walking out of the church, the prince followed her and shut the church door after her. Thus he kept one of her gloves in his hand. Then she went away and mounted a horse again. The prince followed her and asked her when she came. "Oh, I'm from Bathland," said Kari. And when the prince took out the glove and wanted to give it back to her, she said, "Darkness behind me and light on my way. Then the prince is seeing where I'm going today." The prince had never seen the equal of the glove, and he went far and wide after in the country where the proud lady who rode without her glove had said that she came from, but no one could tell her where it lay. Next Sunday someone had to take up a towel to the prince. "Ah, may I have leave to do that?" said Kari. "What will be the use of that?" said the others who were in the kitchen. "You saw what happened last time." Kari would not give in, but went on begging leave till she got it. Then she ran up the stairs so that her wooden gown clattered again. Out came the prince, and when he saw there was Kari, he snatched a towel from her flung eyes. "Be off at once, you ugly troll," he said. "Do you think I want a towel that's been touched by your dirty fingers?" Yeah, the prince really isn't very nice in this story, is he, Carl? After that, the prince went to church, and Kari also asked leave to go. They all asked how she could want to go to church when said nothing to bear that wooden gown, which was so black and hideous. But Kari said the priest was such a good man at preaching that she got so much benefit from what he said, and last she got leave. So she went to the rock and knocked, whereupon out came a man and gave her a gown which was more magnificent than the first. It was embroidered with silver all over, and it shone like the silver wood, and he gave to her the most beautiful horse, with housings embroidered with silver, and a bridle of silver too. When the king's daughter got to church, all the people were standing outside upon the hillside, and all of them wondered who on earth she could be. And the prince was on the alert in a moment, and came and went to hold her horse while she alit. But she jumped off and said there was no need for that, for the horse was so well broken in that it stood still when she bade it, and came when she called it. So they all went to the church together. There was scarcely anyone who listened to what the priest was saying, for they were all looking too much at her, and the prince fell more deeply in love with her than she'd ever been before. When the sermon was over, she came and went to the church, and was just going to mount her horse, and the prince came again and asked her where she came from. "I am from Towerland," said the king's daughter, and she spoke As she spoke, she dropped her riding whip, and while the prince was lightly stooping to pick it up, she said, "Darkness behind me, but light upon my way, that the prince may not see where I'm going today." Next Sunday, Alice wanted to go to the prince with a comb, and Kari begged for leave to go with it, but I was reminded of what happened the last time and scolded for letting the prince see her when she was so black and ugly in her wooden gown, but she would not give up asking until they gave her leave to go up to the prince with the comb. When she first went clattering up the stairs, out came the prince and took the comb and flung it after her, ordering her to be off as fast as she could. And after that the prince went to church, and Kari also begged for leave. Again they all asked her what she would do there. She was so black and ugly and had no clothes that could she ever be seen by other people. The prince or someone else might very easily catch sight of her, they said, and then both she and they would suffer for it. But Kari said she had something else to do than look at her, and she never ceased begging till she got leave to go. And now all happened just as happened twice already. She went away to the rock, Carl, and knocked at it with the stick, and then the man came out and gave her a gown that was very much more magnificent than the others, so almost entirely made of pure gold and diamonds. She also got a noble horse with housings embroidered with gold and a golden bridle. When the king's daughter came out to the church, the priests and all the people were standing on the hillside waiting for her. And the prince ran up and wanted to hold the horse, but she jumped off, saying, "No, thank you, there's no need. My horse is so well broken that it will stand still when I bid it." So they all hastened to church together, and the priest got into the pulpit, but no one listened to what he had to say, for they were looking far too much at her and wondering where she came. And the prince was more in love with her than she had been on the former occasions, and he too was mindful of nothing but looking at her. When the sermon was over and the king's daughter was about to leave the church, the prince called a firkin of tar to be emptied into the perch that he might help her over it. She, however, did not trouble herself in the least about the tar, but set her foot in the middle and jumped over it, and thus one of her gold shoes was left sticking in it. For when she had seated herself on the horse, the prince came running out of the church and asked her where she came from. "From Combland," said Kari, but when the prince wanted to reach her gold shoe, she said, "Darkness behind me, but light upon my way, that the prince may not see where I am going today." The prince did not know what would become of her, and as he travelled for a long and wearisome time all over the world, asking where Combland was, but when no one could tell where that country was, he caused it to be known everywhere that he would marry any woman who could put on the gold shoe. So fair maidens and ugly maidens came from there from all regions, but there was none with a foot so small that she could put on the gold shoe. And after long last there came Kari Woodengown's wicked stepmother with a daughter too, and the shoe fitted her. But she was so ugly and loathsome the prince was very unwilling to do what he had promised. Nevertheless, all was got ready for the wedding, and she was decked out as a bride. But when they were riding to church, a little bird up in a tree sang, "A slice of her heel and a slice of her toes. Kari Woodengown's shoe fills with blood as she goes." And then they looked, and they found that the bird had spoken the truth, for blood was trickling out of the shoe. So all the waiting maids and all the womenkind in the castle had to come on and try the shoe, for there was not one who would fit. "But where is Kari Woodengown, then?" asked the prince, when all others had tried on the shoe, for he understood the song of birds and came to his mind what the bird had said. "Well, that creature," said the others, "is not the least used to her to come and try, for she has feet like a horse." "Maybe," said the prince, "but all as have tried, Kari may try it too." "Kari," he called out through the door, and Kari came upstairs, and a Woodengown clattered off as a whole regiment of dragoons were coming up. "Now you are to try on the gold shoe and be a princess," said the other servants, and they laughed at her and mocked it. And Kari took on the shoe, put it on her foot as easily as possible, and then threw off her wooden gown, and there she stood in the golden gown which flashed like rays of sunshine. On the foot she had the fellow to the gold shoe. The prince knew her in that moment, was so glad that he took her in arms and kissed her, and when he heard that she was a king's daughter he was gladder still, and then they had the wedding. Honestly, I like the story of the bull, who I think is the real prince and the real hero of this. But I really do not like the prince in this one, Carl. Anyone who is cruel to you, or if he thinks that you're poor or you're weaker than he is, but is nice to you when he thinks that you're rich or beautiful or anything else, is not someone whose friendship's worth having, much less their affection. Anyone who's nasty to people a lot worse off than him or herself is really not worth the time. Until next time, Carl.